Yeah, everybody should try to be the best around. Um, you always got to go through obstacles to be the best. I'm your host, KJD, and tonight I'm going to talk about the NBA playoffs with the formatting also. Right now you have Oklahoma and San Antonio playing tomorrow night at Oklahoma City. San Antonio's up 2-1, and right now you have the Miami Heat, which have taken a commanding 3-1 lead on the Indiana Pacers. Game 5 will be going back to Indiana on Wednesday night. I'm going to talk about what I think is flawed about the NBA playoff system. Okay, so you had the Phoenix Suns who won 48 games, which was the exact same record as the Raptors and the Bulls, who were seeded 3rd and 4th in the East, respectively. I'm sorry to say it, but I understand the Miami Heat won 2 championships in a row, but I think the simple fact that they played in a conference where your 3rd seed would not have qualified to be in the playoffs had they have been in the opposite conference, I mean, it does raise some red flags on you. I mean, I don't care if you win 5 championships in a row. I've always been one of those people. I think who you play against means just as much. But I get a lot of people that say, oh, well, KJD, they beat the team that won the West. So doesn't that mean they're better than whoever came out of the West? Well, quite frankly, I don't exactly think that. Don't totally agree with that. Here's my theory. So the team that came out of the West, their first round opponent was better than the East winners round 1 opponent, and their round 2 and round 3 opponents were better than the Eastern Conference champions round 2 and 3 opponents. So naturally, by the time those two teams meet each other, the team with the harder schedule is pretty much burnt out. I mean, that's a disadvantage to the team that had the easier road. I mean, what I think the best thing should be is, to make it meaningful for everybody in your conference, because you had the Atlanta Hawks who took the Indiana Pacers to a 7-game series, who were below 500, by the way. And I think the Indiana Pacers are the worst number 1 seed in the history of the NBA. I think this Pacers team is. You can't tell me that they're as good as your Reggie Miller Pacers from back in the day. I think what they should do is take the top 8 teams from the East and the top 8 teams from the West and seed them all 1 through 16. So yeah, that would have meant San Antonio, OKC, and the Clippers would have been 1 through 3. Indiana would have had the 4th best record in the league. Houston, Portland, and Miami would have been seeded 5 through 7. You'd have to find a way to sort it out with some kind of tiebreakers. Golden State obviously would have been number 8, so Golden State would host a first-round series against the Memphis Grizzlies, yes, because they would have been the best team out of all those teams to make the playoffs that did not have home court advantage, if you seeded them all that way. So, what that also means is you eliminate all the loopholes in terms of one team having an easy road to the championship every year. I understand LeBron James gets a lot of hate from a lot of fans. I'm guilty of being one of those quote-unquote LeBron haters. I think he's the best player on the planet. I think it's blasphemy to think otherwise. But at the same time, if you're going to tell me that the Eastern Conference is better than the Western Conference, I think you've committed an even bigger form of sports blasphemy, because there's more argument against LeBron James being the best player on the planet, because to say that is an opinion. It's an opinionated statement. But to say that the East is better than the West, no, you can't come up with a single stat to possibly tell me otherwise. I'm sorry. I mean, the thing about it is you would be eliminating certain teams having an easy route to the championship year in and year out. While it wouldn't solve all the problems, because you'd have Phoenix, who won 48 games, they would not make the playoffs. But at the same time, it'd be a step closer to determining who the best team truly is. I think ideally it should be the best 16 teams in the entire league making the playoffs, but unfortunately, it just doesn't. I don't see why they would do that. But I think that way you'd make your conference regular season games carry more weight. because obviously you play the teams in your conference more often than you play the other conference. The reality is there's never going to be one true way to really make it, to really solve all the problems. But I do think you'd close a lot of loopholes if you got rid of the West teams playing the West teams in the first round and the East teams playing the East teams in rounds 1 through 3 as well. Because the reality is, I think all fans deserve to see the best team win the championship. I mean, let's think about the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. Look at the teams that they played against on the way to the finals. Their second round opponent was probably better than whoever they played in the finals outside of the Indiana Pacers in the 2000 finals. I mean, the Portland Trailblazers that they beat in 2000, more people talk about that series than they talk about the series when the Lakers beat Indiana. Only reason why people talk about the finals when they beat Philadelphia was because they had Allen Iverson, who was the MVP that year. And the Lakers had only lost one playoff game during that whole championship run for their second time in the 2001 playoffs, and Philadelphia happened to have been the only team that happened to have won a game against them. But let's not forget the Sacramento Kings series in 2002. More people talk about that series than they talk about when the Lakers beat the Nets in the finals, because that was a 4-0 sweep where the Lakers needed 7 games to topple the Kings. So, just another food for thought, I mean, because I think if you change the playoff format, the current Pacers-Miami matchup would be a second-round matchup as opposed to a conference finals matchup. I mean, that's part of the reality. I mean, all fans deserve to have the best team truly make it to the championship. I mean, because let's face it, you know, a lot of Heat fans complain about LeBron having their haters. I know I'm guilty of it to an extent. But I can promise you a lot of the LeBron hate would shut up quick if the best team was truly winning the championship. And, I mean, I know I'm repeating myself and I'm sounding like a broken record. But if you honestly think that the playoff format needs to stay the way that it is, then I guess you're content with the reigning champions being paper champions and pretty much thinking that it's okay to be the Tommy Gunn of your craft. People that wonder what I'm talking about, I'm making reference to the Rocky Balboa movies. If you remember, anybody that saw Rocky V would know that Tommy Gunn got a lot of criticism from the press in that movie because he fought nobody, saying that he would never escape Balboa's shadow because they said Balboa fought through a lot of tough opponents. Tommy Gunn wasn't really going up against anybody, according to the media, when they got on his case. And they said he was never going to escape Balboa's shadow. And even though I'm not saying that Kobe's greater than Jordan, I think he can legitimately say that he escaped his shadow because look at who he went up against. LeBron. I can't say he's ever going to get out of his shadow because of that. I mean, I know I'm guilty being a hater, but as long as the East stays as weak as it is, a lot of his haters are going to still have a legitimate excuse to hate him. I mean, or not give him his credit where people think credit is due. And I know some people are going to say, oh, you're just saying this because you're tired of seeing the same team win over and over again. Well, to an extent, that's true, but I think every fan deserves to see the best team truly win. And I think if you do this, you can't say, oh, well, one team had an easy path to the finals. Well, sometimes it'll still happen, and unfortunately all the loopholes won't close out, because you might have one team that just matches up really well with another team. Because let's say you did it that way. Let's say you changed all the matchups. Let's say you seeded everybody 1 through 16. You had the Spurs playing against Atlanta. Spurs bench probably would have swept that team. OKC against Charlotte. Okay, I'm sure y'all know how that would have went. The Clippers against the Nets. Yeah, I think the only reason why the Nets only would have gotten lucky to win one game is because for whatever reason Darren Williams was always Chris Paul's kryptonite during their New Orleans and Utah days. And I think I'm being nice when I say that. So if y'all want to rebuke this with me, y'all want to rebuttal it on me, go ahead. But just make sure you think before you speak on it, because, you know, we all deserve to see the best team truly win. If you don't want to see the best team, the true best team win, don't you dare call yourself a fan of the game. I think the NBA, out of all the professional sports, has the worst imbalance of competition between their two leagues or conferences respectively. I mean, like, if you look at the NFL with the AFC or the NFC, there's not really a total imbalance every year. Baseball, even hockey and soccer, their leagues, they don't have the same problem that the NBA has with their balance of competition. And that's just all I want to see at the end of the day. I want to see the best team win. I mean, hey, if the Miami Heat were actually playing great teams in the second round, you know, teams that would have actually made the playoffs in the opposite conference, I'd actually give them their credit where people say credit is due, but I just don't see it, because I don't really think they're the best team. I don't care if they win 5 in a row. If they play the same teams on the way, they have the same path every year that they've been having, they're going to win all the time. It's inevitable. I mean, what LeBron, Wade, and Bosh said about winning 7 rings in a row, that's inevitable. So, alright, I'll let y'all go. Y'all talk later with me. Y'all let me know what y'all think.